Now, for our top story, we head to the Middle East, where the Gaza Civil Defense Agency has reported that the death toll has risen to 52 people, including 8 children who were killed in Israeli airstrikes in Gaza overnight. The bombardments targeted central and southern areas of the territory, with the deadliest attack striking near el-Balah, where 12 lives were lost. This comes just hours after Hamas announced it was willing to release 10 Israeli hostages as part of ceasefire talks in Qatar. Here's what the Gazan residents had to say.
شيء لا يتصوره العقل. قتل الإنسان، قتل الحجر، قتل البشر، قتل الحيوان، شيء يعني شيء مش طبيعي اللي بصير هذا. شيء مش طبيعي. فيش عندهم نوايا سليمة اللي لوقف الحرب. فيش نوايا بالمرة لوقف الحرب. هيك مبين إن احنا إن شاء الله بتقف الحرب هذه قريب إن شاء الله.
فجأة هيك ما عطوش حذر ولا عطوا حاجة، فجأة انقصفت الدار والناس فيها. لقيت احنا في الوقت هذا كنا نايمين، ما شفنا الا غبرة وحجار علينا، طب نصرخ عشان ننقذ اولادنا من تحت الردم، والحمد لله ان اجت اولادنا على قدر هيك.
Meanwhile, the Israeli Defense Forces are reporting major operations in the south. The IDF's Golani Brigade has destroyed a 500-metre-long Hamas tunnel in Khan Yunis, along with over 130 terror infrastructures, including weapon caches and mortar positions, that's according to the IDF. As the conflict intensifies, both sides continue their military operations, with heavy casualties reported on both sides. We're now joined by Professor Kobi Michael, who's a senior researcher at the INSS and Miskav Institute. Thank you very much for joining us, Professor Michael. I first of all want to start with what's going on the battlefield. Reported from the Hamas ran Gaza Health Ministry, there's been 52 deaths overnight, including 8 children. I want to briefly talk about the continued destruction supposedly caused by Israeli airstrikes. Some say indiscriminate. We have 8 children killed here. What are your thoughts on the military strategies of the IDF as peace talks lay going on in the background?
Thank you for having me. First of all, we have to be much more accurate with regard to the figures which are provided, and to remember that all the figures are provided by Hamas.
I did mention that, Professor Michael. I mentioned
it. Okay, so now it's my turn to to refer to that. And we have to remember that Hamas is not the ultimate reliable source in this regard, and we witnessed many times before that the figures that were reported by Hamas were not accurate, at least. Secondly, Hamas does not differentiate between combatants and civilians, and for them, all the people who are killed are civilians, and even innocent civilians. The IDF doesn't fight the population, the civilians. On the contrary, the IDF warns the civilians to leave the combat zones, and it even loses its capabilities to surprise Hamas by alarming in advance the people to leave these locations. And we are not in peace talks with Hamas because there is no peace, and there is no any option to have peace with Hamas. We are negotiating with Hamas through the mediators in order to reach to a sort of an agreement, be it a Witkoff proposal or another agreement. And as long as there is no such an agreement, the war continues. And we have to remember that the first responsibility and the main responsibility with regard to this war and the casualties, the unfortunate and sadly, I would say casualties, are first of all on the shoulders of Hamas. They decide to continue the war. They decide to continue using their people as human shields. They decide to continue using humanitarian and civilian facilities like hospitals, schools, UN facilities, even cemeteries, whatever you want, as terror compounds. And therefore, the IDF has to deal and to tackle a very complicated combat zone, the most complicated one in any comparison to other urban warfare zones. And I hope that we will be able to finalize the Gazan case and to reach to an agreement where Hamas will not remain as an effective sovereign power in the Gaza Strip.
Yes, Professor Michael, just to say we have to use those figures coming out of the Gazan Health Ministry, as Israel doesn't let any independent press into the Gaza Strip. However, Benjamin Netanyahu, some of his critics coming from within Israel, mainly the relatives of hostages, are seeing that Benjamin Netanyahu is signaling that the release of these hostages are his top priority now, and defeating and quashing Hamas has fallen down the pile. Some would say there's been conflicting opinions on this. Do you see these talks as optimism for these hostages that are still held in Gaza? We have 27 that Israel intelligence has confirmed have been killed. But for those who are still alive, Professor Michael, is there optimism for them?
I think that there is a bit more optimism with regard to the Witkoff proposal, which is partial with regard to the total number of the hostages, alive or dead, which means that 10 hostages who are alive will be released in 60 days, and 18 dead hostages. But it doesn't mean that we will be able to reach to the second phase. And I'm not sure that Hamas is willing on the one side or capable on the other hand to release all the hostages due to two major reasons. The first one is that as long as Hamas keeps hostages, they keep the ultimate insurance policy for their survival, and as long as they will not be sure in 1,000,000% that they have the international guarantees, mainly the American guarantees, that Israel will not resume the war under any conditions, they will not be willing to release all the hostages. Secondly, I'm not sure that Hamas is capable to release all the hostages because Hamas doesn't hold all the hostages, mainly the dead hostages. And we have to remember that the Gaza Strip of today, with regard to the geography and the terrain, is not something that we used to know a year or 2 years ago. And many combatants of Hamas that buried dead hostages are not with us anymore.
Okay.
And I'm not sure that Hamas will be capable to reach to the places that these hostages are buried. And
Yes.
in addition to that, there are some other Palestinian factions that hold hostages, and they do not comply to Hamas.
Professor,
So I'm not sure.
Professor,
Yes.
I do apologise. We have run out of time on that story. You are staying